Hi there. Something I've wanted to try for some time is throwing with air-dried clay. I really want to find out whether it's possible to make a viable pot from air-dried clay on a wheel. I know it won't be strong and durable, won't be food safe, waterproof, and so on, but I'm curious to see if it can be an enjoyable throwing experience. So I have a few different brands of air-dried clay here. I'm pretty sure some of these are clay-based and may contain varying amounts of paper, fibre, clay, glue, wood dust, and other stuff. This one really feels like porcelain. So here goes. I'm going to use this one, the smoothest. It looks okay. It doesn't smell too much either. Some of them really are quite wafty. So I'm just going to wedge a bit. Has an interesting feel, definitely porcelain-like. So it's pretty smooth and uniform. I'm not too worried about air bubbles, so I don't need to wedge too much. So let's get throwing. I'm going to make a straight-sided plant pot so I can test out some finishes. So I'm going to center the clay and I'm just going to make my pot as I would with regular clay. Of course, you really want to be careful that you don't mix up air-dried clay with regular clay. You don't want to mix up finished objects, and you really don't want to fire air-dried clay in a kiln. It's just not made to fire at temperature. So far it's been pretty easy to center. So now I'm going to open up. I really have no idea how I'm going to finish my air-dried clay pot, except obviously it won't be glazed. So I'll be experimenting with surfaces such as acrylic paint, some different coatings like Mod Podge. I'll definitely be trying some waterproofing finishes on the pots, and hopefully I can find some finishes that add durability. Some of the finishing I'll use will depend on how the air-dried clay dries and how hard it becomes. I know there's a lot of variation in air-dried clay. The term air-dried clay seems to encompass a broad range of clays, from epoxy-based air-dried clay to foam clays. Some of these really aren't suitable in terms of consistency for throwing on the wheel. I'm definitely checking that the clay I'm using is non-toxic. Do this by checking out the material safety data sheet. As with all clay, when you're finishing your work, minimize dust. Some of these clays contain silica or talc or other ingredients that you don't want to inhale. Anyway, the feeling of this clay is very clay-like. It's still very smooth. I'm curious to see how it might dry and how much it'll shrink. I understand that air-dried clay has a lot of limitations in terms of functionality, and that rules it out for making a lot of objects commonly made on the wheel, functional objects. However, so far, I think the experience of throwing with this clay is okay. So I guess the question is, why would you use this clay? So one of the main reasons for using air-dried clay is that you don't need access to a kiln. Another great feature of air-dried clay is its shrinkage and the fact that you could embed objects for mixed media work. I'm looking forward to trying some other air-dried clays to see how different they are. So how did this process stack up? Well, the clay felt like a smooth porcelaneous clay. Wedging, centering, opening up and pulling up walls felt quite similar to a regular clay. I'm curious to see how this dries, and then I can work out whether I want to trim my pot or not. The biggest challenge will be working out how to finish my pot. So my next video will be exploring various finishing options. If you'd like to share any comments or ideas on using air dry clay on the wheel, feel free to comment below. As always, like, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe so that you can find out how this air dried clay experiment turns out. As always, thanks for watching.